part 2, let's just jump into it. Once you get Hellscream down to 10% health, a transition phase will begin where he will heal to full and teleport the raid into a realm of Y'Shaarj, which will last for a minute. Whenever he jumps back into this transition phase, Garrosh will gain 10% of his health back. During this phase, he will be teleported to one of 3 locations: the Temple of the Jade Serpent, the Temple of the Red Crane, or the Terrace of the Endless Springs. All you have to do is kill the adds that spawn, and then kill Garrosh carefully without getting shit on. Garrosh will be immune until all the adds are killed. So while you are killing adds, Garrosh will be draining the heart of Y'Shaarj and gaining energy. This will be stopped when all the adds are dead and you attack him. This needs to be done quickly because too much energy will be bad for your raid. When killing Garrosh, he will spam Annihilate. This is a frontal cone attack that he will use in random directions, and it will tickle your rectum if hit, killing you quickly. Stack up on him and adjust positioning slightly to avoid being hit by his heavy cleave. The ability actually also does an AoE, so even if you do manage not to die, you're still going to take a little bit of damage. During this time, there are a few adds. Try and have everyone as close to the adds as possible in killing them because they actually do drop a buff. Embodied Fears are on the Terrace of the Endless Spring and buff raid members in a small radius when they die, reducing damage taken by 50%. There are a lot of these little shits, so just AoE them down. Embodied Doubts are at the Temple of the Jade Serpent and also reduce players' buff damage taken by 50%. These dicks are grouped up, so DPS the groups down quickly. Embodied Despairs are at the Temple of the Red Crane and also reduce the player's damage taken by 50%. 2 of these guys will be at the temple. All these buffs last until the end of transition, so when you walk in, half the group will need to go left and the other will have to go right. There's an add on each side that needs to die. Garrosh will retain any damage you do to him in the transition phase in the next phase. Phase 2. Garrosh will be at full health except for the damage done during the transition. Garrosh has several abilities during this phase. To summarize, Whirling Corruption is a whirlwind that needs to be avoided, which can be done by moving away. This is channeled for 6 seconds, and at 25 energy, the ability becomes empowered. Empowered Whirling Corruption will additionally shoot a missile at a random raider, dealing decent damage to everyone within 8 yards of the target. The ability will also summon a minion of Y'Shaarj. These adds don't use any abilities, but actually buff other minions when they die. They will heal other minions back to full health and grant them 200% increased health and damage. This buff will stack, so when the minions pop up, the DPS need to kill the minions away from other minions. Garrosh will cast Touch of Y'Shaarj on a few random raiders. This is just one big mind control orgy. The 2 players that get mind controls will attempt to mind control other players, but this can actually be interrupted. The mind control will break when a player reaches 20% of their maximum health. The mind control players need to be focused really fucking quickly. The mind controls can really start to get out of hand, so you need to deal with them immediately, regardless of how much health Garrosh has left. When Garrosh reaches 50 energy, this becomes empowered. Empowered Touch of Y'Shaarj is pretty much the same as the non-empowered version, except mind control players are turned into Shaw, and they are immune to loss of control effects, and they get their health increased. This means that the mind control players can only be interrupted, and of course, this is a real priority. You're going to wipe if you don't deal with the mind control players. Desecrate is the same from phase 1, but at 75 energy, it will become an empowered version. But we didn't really focus the weapons down, we just spread the weapons out so we had room. Just keep an eye on when he's about to chuck the weapon and have the targets run out of the way so it's not a problem. Empowered Desecrate stops the desecrated weapon from being killed. The weapon will take damage, but they just regenerate the health way too quickly. Damage in the weapon still reduces the size of the void zone. Gripping Despair is a stacking dot that the boss will use on his target. This will require a tank switch at about 3-ish stacks. This ability becomes empowered at 100 energy. Empowered Gripping Despair will cause explosive despair each time the dot wears off. This deals damage to the affected raider and stacks a debuff on them. The damage done is relative to the current value of Gripping Despair on the target, so the buff will cause the raider to take 10% increased damage from the explosive despair from every stack. The buff will last for 2 minutes, and therefore at this point during the fight, probably the rest of the fight. To be honest, if you get to this point, you've probably done some stuff wrong already, or you just lack the DPS. It's not really that big of an issue, but simply be aware that this will be happening if you do reach 100 energy. During this phase, Garrosh should be tanked in the center of the room. Tanks will need to switch when they hit 3 stacks of Gripping Despair. Space will need to be conserved during this phase, so have the ranged DPS and healers stack up on a point in the room, and when Desecrate is used, have them move away slightly, ignoring the desecrated weapon. Throughout this phase, about every 2.5 minutes, the raid will periodically be sent back into the transition phase. So it turns out there's going to actually be 3 parts to the video. Check out for part 3 coming soon.